throw deep. 38 yards is not that big of an ask when we're talking about specifically Jalen Hurts' longest pass.
You know, there was a time way back when Doug Peterson, there's a team in Jacksonville now. There's a team in Jacksonville. There was a time when Doug Peterson was with the Philadelphia Eagles and led them to a Super Bowl. There was a time this Jalen Hurts was in diapers when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Doug Peterson was the head coach. This Nick Sirianni was in diapers when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I saw it. I was there. It was one of the most amazing things you've ever seen. Doug is back. The Eagles are back. We got 5-5.
Start the clock, will you? Thumbs up, subscribe. Hey, you know the drill, right? Welcome in. Let's start with the Jaguars. Why not start with the Doug P, right? Peterson, Doug Peterson, who is now 5-1 against the spread in the playoffs. That's in the postseason as a head coach. This man covers spreads. Now, you had that one game earlier in week 10. Oh, yeah, where the Chiefs covered. They were favored by 9.5. They won by 10. You know what, though? They were -3 in turnovers. It's a rarity, something that I don't think can clearly happen again. By the way, Peterson's 6-1 against the spread. I don't want to short him by any means. Doug P behind us, leading another team to victory. How about 3 separate fourth quarter comebacks we've seen before the one against the Chargers where they were down big time? We saw that multiple times this year. I think the Chiefs clearly have the advantage at the quarterback spot, but not as big of an advantage overall. First play is Jacksonville +9. All right, next one. I really like this here, and we're going to move to head-to-heads because I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be throwing a lot. And there's a really good pathway here for Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, to win, to cover, to even blow out the Jacksonville Jaguars, to where the Jaguars are imploding or the Chiefs just aren't doing this with big play after big play. They are moving the football down the field methodically. We've seen shorter passes, quick gets to a guy like Jerick McKinnon, and they haven't been up a ton in which they can kind of exhale and run a clock or even a quarter out. Andy Reid, Mahomes, these guys have been here before. And while Spags' defense hasn't looked great this year, I think that
So you think at this stage of the game that's just better?
Yeah, that's a win.
Is this a UFC Rainmaker show we're doing here?
Yes.
Yeah. Only Anaconda jokes.
And NFL all day.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Perfect reception. Let's go.
Aaron Donald.
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Deeper Dive. This guy's working on a Saturday, so let's make it happen. All 3 of us. Saturday, divisional round, then we'll be here again next week. Only on a Sunday. We'll be here tomorrow as well, but we got 4 games to break down. Divisional round weekend. Very fun slate. Ben said just a minute ago, before Mike's went hot, it was a tough slate. So we'll see what we can do to navigate these waters. More than anything, happy to have you guys with us this weekend. Hit that thumbs up as you come in. Atone for your sins out of the gate. Wash yourselves clean of that stink. Subscribe to the channel. And I won't even, now you don't leave a comment. This is a short shelf life show. We get that. But anyway, Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on the Twitters, joined by Alex Baker at Awesemo DFS. What's up, brother?
What's up, guys? Yeah, this one had a few enough time to really think about what the best strategies are for this slate. It's tough because it's all good teams, but I think I've come up with some good stuff here. So excited.
All right. Yeah. And you and I did the strategy show, the tournament strategy show yesterday. So with Neil Orfield. We'll see if we can build on that. But we got the band back together today, boys, because Ben Rasa at Raz DFS joining us for a little Saturday action. What's going on, man?
Yeah, excited to be here. A great sports day. I said this last week. You weren't on the show. It was Etienne, and I said that. And just these Saturdays, you got UFC, you got college basketball. Now we're bringing NFL playoffs in. Just jam-packed, tough slate. I'm really interested to see what you guys are thinking here because there's a lot of different directions you can go when you've got 8 teams, all of this quality on the same slate.
You got any degenerate college basketball bets going today?
Oh, I got them. And I know you're not doing that to plug the insider access, which all those bets are there. But I will say, for the people, UTEP Miners tonight, they are going to knock off Florida Atlantic. 18-1 Florida Atlantic. Get them out of here.
I don't know, dude. I feel like Florida Atlantic, just
You're
good
a big
spot.
Owls fan. Smart.
I have trouble betting against UTEP.
Yeah.
What
We
where
all
is
do.
that?
Don't
What's
hate
that,
on
Alex?
UTEP.
Oh, never mind. That was El Paso, right?
I should have just let it go. Anyway, happy to have you guys here. Let's make some money. Let's do some things today. We got 4 games. We'll kick it off with Jacksonville Jaguars, Kansas City. Ben, this one moved to 9.5 now. Not to say that's like that. If we're talking 10, then it's. But we were 8.5 all week. I know we got bet down, and then it's been moving back. I think there's some buyback to Kansas City. 53-point total. We talked about it on Tuesday. This could be one of those games where Kansas City runs away with it. But Doug Peterson, and we'll kick it off with the Jag side of this one because he got a 53-point total in this game, even though they are considerable dogs. Doug Peterson goes, he's like, we know we're going to have to score in this game. And of course, yes, you have to score to win. But he's saying, like, unless we're putting up a considerable amount of points against, he's basically resigned already to the idea that they could win this with their defense.
And smart. I think that's one of the reasons he's a solid coach is he sees what you need to do. I expect him to be, I mean, he's always somewhat aggressive, but I would imagine that, 4th and short, even early in the game, they're going to go for it. They're going to have to put up points because it seems far-fetched to think that Kansas City at home off the bye doesn't put up a healthy amount of points. Their team total is fantastic. You mentioned a 53-point total in the game, and they're nearly 10-point favorites. So Jacksonville's going to have to play their part, and if they want to get and cover this number or even win this game, they're going to have to put up points.
Yeah, 31-point implied total for the Kansas City Chiefs. But Alex, when it comes to Jacksonville, very good possibility that they're forced to throw the football. I want to get into your brain, pick your brain a little bit here on this one. Travis Etienne has not been, active in the passing game that much. I mean, sure, you might see a couple targets, handful of targets is even a stretch. You're talking 1, 2, 3 per game potentially. If they fall behind, what type of volume does he see? Maybe they change it up in a game like this. It's hard to say. I do want to start it here, though, and then we can work our way through the pass catchers. With a guy like Travis Etienne, who's competent, been pretty efficient in certain spots, but could get phased out of the passing game. What do you make of him today? We have him scoring pretty high in the boom bust tool with one of the higher optimal scores in the slate.
Yeah, like Etienne. I think the way people are going to approach this is that they're going to play the Jacksonville Jags pass catchers. And the problem is that Jacksonville's only projected for the low 20s in points. So there's a good probability they don't have a tremendous offensive output this game. I mean, they've been pretty good, to be honest. Trevor Lawrence was having a really high completion percentage. That was pretty impressive. There's signs that this is a good team, but the problem is there's just so many good offenses on the slate, and they're kind of the bottom tier. But I think they're going to pick up a lot of ownership because people are expecting a lot of attempts here. So my thought is just go to ETN maybe and fade the rest of the team. And I feel like you're kind of buying into a game full that other people might not be going for.
What about you, Ben? Because that's definitely not the projected game flow given the spread.
No, but it's just a super interesting situation in the sense that one, Travis Etienne can catch the ball. They don't give him opportunities to catch the ball. I'm not really sure why. It seems like he would be a dynamic pass catcher. And two, we all saw the Chargers game where the game script was just awful for them in terms of running the ball, and he still had 20 carries for 109 yards. Now, the Chargers' run defense is that bad, but at the same time, if Etienne's going to get 20 carries in that type of game, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, even if the Chiefs cover this number, that Etienne doesn't see another 20 carries in this spot. And that's a lot of volume for his price.
I really considered breaking my brother-in-law's TV that night in the first half of that game when like just 0 rushing attempts. And Trevor Lawrence is getting picked every time he drops back. And Doug's like, you got this. Like, how many of those 20 plus carries came in the second half when they actually mounted that comeback?
Which is shocking when you think about what the situation was. You're down 4 touchdowns and you start running the ball. So in some ways, I think that helps Etienne in the sense, if they fall behind by 2 touchdowns here, they're not going to just abandon the run. They've already proven that against the Chargers.
Right. Yeah, they just it's not that they won't abandon the run. They won't run at all, and then they'll just run a ton later.
Establish it. Yeah.
Look, Etienne obviously in a 53-point total game, it's hard not to like him. But as the pass catchers, as far as they go, Ben, you're talking Christian Kirk, 6K. Zay Jones is affordable. Evan Ingram has been a guy that over the past couple months of the season has really been, depending on the week, of course, but has been one of Trevor Lawrence's go-to guys. And when you get those games that Trevor Lawrence just dials in to Evan Ingram, you're seeing double-digit target type performances.
Oh yeah, my guy. So
he made you a ton of money this year.
Yeah, oh yeah, just a print fest over here. I'm selling off shit all over the place to pay for that guy because I can't get him right. The nice thing about Jacksonville is you have guys, because you didn't even mention Marvin Jones, who's sub 4K, and another guy, he's got 19 targets over the last 3 games. He's involved. So you have really pass catchers at every level. I give people a sneak peek to one of my favorite tools, the boom bust. Evan Ingram, the leverage score isn't great because it does seem like he's going to be overowned. And that is a concern here. We know when he gets double-digit targets, yeah, he has big-time upside. Problem is he also has some games where he kind of disappears. And you mentioned if Lawrence hones in on him. If he doesn't, he's going to be a very popular mid-range tight end target that might only see 3 to 5 targets in this game. So I'm kind of mixing and matching with Jacksonville today.
And I think I asked you this earlier this week, but you're perfectly fine going with, like a Kelce Ingram double tight end play here. Yeah. Are you, Alex? How do you feel about the game stack? We could talk about either side all day long, but when you have a total of this size, we're really just doing everybody a disservice by not, looking at this to wrap it up from a game stack perspective. I want to, of course, get into Kansas City a little bit more granular there, but just like looking at this game on both sides, how to play it on a 4-game slate is where your expertise comes into play here for sure.
Yeah, this week it's interesting because I feel like usually I like betting on players, but this week I feel like I'm almost betting against players that I'm going to be under the field on. And I mean, there's like several in this game. Ingram is one that I feel like tight end is a little bit tough to get right this week. There aren't a ton of great options, so I might have more Ingram. But then when it comes to like Zay Jones and the other pass catchers like Kirk, I feel like being a little bit under the field could be a smart move because I feel like they're going to be pretty popular this week. And then with Kansas City, I mean, they're also going to be popular, but the difference is they're so much better at offense. So I'm feeling like on the Kansas City side, there's a lot of good options.
Do you have a top option there outside of Kelce? Because that's where it gets kind of tricky, right? You have McKinnon, who has the second highest target share on the team over the last 2 months. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, who's cheap. You have MVS, a healthy Kadarius Toney. Mecole Hardman is out for what it's worth. But like you're talking about one of the higher pass volume guys on this team is Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, I feel like McKinnon is, he's in a decent spot because Kansas City is so pass heavy and he's been the better running back by far, right? So, but I do feel like he's going to be popular because he has this absurd touchdown streak where he has, 8 in the last 6 games and touchdown in every game. And I just feel like this is the point where I want to just keep betting against him. And the natural pivot is Pacheco, who he's been getting a lot of attempts, but it hasn't materialized into big box scores yet. But, every week you see these 2 and 3 touchdown games. I feel like Pacheco definitely has that in the range of outcomes just as much as McKinnon. So this one's pretty clear to me that I'm going to just fade the hot hand with McKinnon and probably go to Pacheco a lot more.
Hippopotamus with a super chat. All hippopotamus with a $10 super chat here. Appreciate all the NBA help lately. Let's smash today's slate like a 300-pound hippo running through a gorilla. For those of you that watch Tuesday's show, you would understand. Thanks for all you gentlemen do. Appreciate you, man. And mind you, Ben, notice that he said running through a gorilla, not through me.
I'm just going to let it go. I will say, if you didn't watch
I'd have his eyes. Show,
do yourself a favor. Go watch the last half hour of that bad boy.
Good.
But appreciate that super chat.
I'd have his eyes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
What are you doing with
that?
Obviously, Kelce's the Kelce thing, and I asked Neil and Alex this yesterday. Let me ask you, and I'm sure there's plenty of people watching that weren't able to watch the tournament strategy show. How does Kelce stack up for you? Not against other tight ends, because that's just, the obvious, but how does he stack up against the other top tier receivers who are all essentially the same price? Because he's actually getting the most ownership of all of them.
Yeah, that's the thing that stood out to me when I was looking at our tools. He's very popular, and of course he's filling a different position, but I'm not gonna say it's an opportunity cost. There are a lot of reasonable punt tight ends. So in addition, one of them is probably going to find the end zone and return a nice points per dollar. Kelce doesn't just blow the top off the slate. You're talking about $3,000 or $4,000 that you can now allocate to go get Chase or Diggs or one of those top end guys. And that's where I think it gets tricky. I want Kansas City exposure, but what a difficult situation. Because you really are playing roulette with an offense that could have 35 or 40 points today. So that's the decision we have to make. I'll just say this real quick to piggyback off what Alex said. Pacheco is super interesting because if he smashes, it's probably coming at the detriment of everybody else because he's a pure running back. He could isolate multiple touchdowns on the ground and Mahomes wouldn't even benefit. So if Pacheco has a huge day, the Kansas City stack is probably in trouble.
That is true. That is, yeah. I mean, now let's be clear about something too. One of the other reasons for this that it has to at least be mentioned is Jacksonville's run defense is markedly better than their secondary, right? Like we know that. That isn't to say that Pacheco can't just go crazy here. Maybe he does see 16 carries. Maybe they get up early. Andy Reid's going to look to throw the football anyway, though. I totally get that. I where you and Alex are coming from makes a ton of sense, especially considering you're not projecting McKinnon for what, 18 touches or anything like that. He's 6K and you're hoping that he's efficient with his touches. But there's no doubt that Ben, the Jacksonville secondary, 30th ranked in the league, this is an exploitable area for them for sure.
Okay, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's just how does Kansas City exploit it? I mean, they've got so many different ways that they can do that. And then there's the old, they know that. Are they going to just drop a ton in coverage and say, okay, we dare Kansas City to just run up and down the field? We'd rather have Pacheco do it than Mahomes over the top. I think that's a reasonable possibility.
All right. So then same question to you. You kind of answered this, but same question to you. If you're stacking this game, what are your favorite ways in a large field tournament to maybe get different, maybe mix things up a little bit? Or is it playing this game with individual plays without stack? Like any way you can see to get exposure here without, doing what everyone else, or is there anything that everyone's doing? Because there's so many options on both sides, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's an overwhelming, obvious, given, you have Hurts and Josh Allen we're going to get to. So it's not just that. I'd say this, Pacheco's a way to be different. And I think you have to find a way to try to decipher the wide receiver position. Everyone knows about McKinnon. Everyone knows about Kelce. You've got Juju, you've got MVS, and you've got Tony. If you can get the right one with Mahomes, all those guys have seriously low floors and serious ceilings. So I think that's kind of the key. But this entire game, I'm mixing and matching. I want exposure, but I do not have guys that I'm saying I am honing in on this one guy on this team.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to get to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Yeah. Alex, who are your favorite value plays from this game? Oddly, with such a high total, we have a lot of cheap options on both sides.
Yeah, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is my favorite. Because the other value plays are going to be correspondingly high owned. Because Kirk, Zay Jones, they've been pretty effective. Evan Ingram, they've always like had pretty high ceilings recently, where MVS has been sub 10 points every week, but like there's just so much variance in the receiver position, and we know MVS is kind of like that field stretching player that is going to hit big chunk plays, like when he does get the opportunities. So I feel like he's the sharp play in this game at receiver. Well, Juju Smith-Schuster, I think he's really solid. My fade is Kadarius Toney, because I just don't see any evidence that he's going to get enough playing time to really make a huge impact. It could happen this week, and I'm just a week behind, but we got to take some stands somewhere.
So essentially, we all know it can happen, but what you're saying is there's nothing we've seen to suggest that it should happen.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'll get the tweet when it does happen, like, "Hey, idiot, told you so." It's like, we had no idea. Go ahead. Everyone's
betting that it's going to happen, so I feel like I think there's enough reason to be skeptical. I mean, he's only had okay. If you look at his targets, last game 2 targets. I mean, 2 games ago 4 targets and 2-1-1. It's like he's barely on the field, like about a third of the time. So there's a chance that his playing time goes up at the expense of MVS or Justin Watson today, but we just haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and the one thing, and Josh Gillum pointed this out, they do look to get him the ball in the red zone. I mean, that is true. We've seen some opportunities, and I believe we saw a red zone touchdown on the ground in week 18, right? I could be wrong. I thought we did. I thought he had a rushing touchdown within the red zone that game. So I get that, yeah. But at the same time, what you're saying, like if he ends up being relatively popular and he still has low volume, but they give him a shot or two in the end zone and he doesn't get there, you could be staring at like a 3 fantasy point game.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the box scores, like he's gotten there the last 2 games, but before that, like it kind of shows there's 3 2-point games, so there's definitely a ton of downside with Toney. He could nuke your lineup.
Ben, any thoughts here on Toney before we wrap it up? I think it's a good place to close out this game.
No, I think we kind of know he's a super explosive player, so he doesn't need a ton of volume to get there. But when you are relying on like 6 touches in a game, he's not the min or something. Like he needs a reasonable output. Generally, I'm willing to roll the dice, but I fully acknowledge, I think we all do, Toney could have 4 touches and have a great output. That's just the nature of how he plays.
Yeah. Same with McKinnon, right? Like McKinnon,
you just have to live with some of that. And when they tend to be popular, you got to say in the long term, I know this will be a plus EV spot. I just have to take those lumps when they come.
Although it doesn't look like Toney or MVS or any of those guys are going to be all that popular today. So, that works on the side of anyone rostering Kadarius Toney. All right, let's keep it going. And yes, Julian, we'll have a show tomorrow for sure. We're doing all 4 games today because there's a Millie Maker for the 4-game slate. But yeah, we'll certainly have a show tomorrow. I think 3:30, I think, is kickoff.
Yeah, it's 3:30.
So we'll be here at 1:30 and then live before lock at 2:30. So yeah, we got you. We got you covered. Hit that thumbs up too if you haven't done so. We got almost 1,400 people watching with us on a Saturday afternoon. Appreciate your guys' loyalty to the show. It means a lot. And also, if you're sitting here going, "Hey, I'd like to get in and get access to the ownership projections or the boom bust tool," everything these guys are talking about, the top stack tool, the new lineup generator, which we just added some incredible features for showdown slates, which there's going to be plenty of this weekend. All of that stuff, all of our projections, ownership, everything, all of our NFL stuff, entirely free. It's 5 days. 5 days. You're not going to need all 5 days, but you're going to get the entire slate. You're going to get the entire slate. So if you haven't done it yet throughout the week, watching these shows, you've been dragging your feet, thinking about it, you still got an opportunity to do it today to get all of the NFL content over the next 2 days, all of the tools for both showdown and for the main slate and any slate out there. We're going to have you covered. So links in the description and in chat. In a bit, I'll tell you how to get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum for every single sport if BetMGM is available in your state. So if that's the case, hold off on this one. If it's not and you can't get on BetMGM, you're not in a legal betting state, there's a perfect opportunity to check out all of our tools for 5 days, hopefully win some money and stick around. All right, Alex, let's move on here. Talking New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles. This game's at what, 8 points now? Yeah, eight points. Philly laying 8 at home at the Link. A little Saturday night football action here. We'll kick it off on the other side. Giants with I won't even say really an upset last week. They were 3-point road dogs against a Minnesota Vikings team that most people anticipated would eventually crumble in the same fashion that they did. Let's start with Saquon Barkley. Only $100 on DraftKings, cheaper than Christian McCaffrey this week.
Yeah, I mean, Saquon Barkley has been having a great season. Can get it done receiving and running. So really not a ton negative to say other than just the touchdown equity for the Giants today is a little bit limited because Philly, they do have a good defense. The other thing is, like last week, the Giants really crushed it. But it was a dome game playing outside in like the 30s. That's going to make it a little bit harder to throw the ball. And it's something they're already not the best at. Like their talent at receiver isn't great. So I do feel like the Giants, people might be chasing some big performances from last week. And I feel like this could be a spot where everyone's pretty disappointed.
Morningwood Blues says, I don't know why you'd have the Blues from that. Niners coming for your Eagles, Laffy. Yeah, I mean, I hope not, but I will say this much. I would rather, if the Eagles win tonight, I would rather the Eagles lose next week to the Niners than the Cowboys win this week and beat us next week. That's going to be hell on earth. You might not see me for a while. That would be brutal. I know it's been a century since the Cowboys have won anything worth most of you watching have probably never seen a Cowboys Super Bowl. You'll talk about the rings. We know that. But if the Cowboys beat us, Ben, and go to the Super Bowl, assuming we even win today, that is going to be painful.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be upset if that happens as well. We'll see. I will say I don't even think this is a hot take. I don't think we're going to see the Eagles and Niners play.
Wait, what do you think it's going to be?
I'm not that. I think one of them is going to lose, obviously.
You think?
I have a funny feeling the Cowboys, that's what I'm kind of alluding to. I have a funny feeling the Cowboys are going to beat the Niners. Me
too, which is why I'm not.
Just lose by 400, but I just have then again, take this from, I thought the Vikings would show up, and what an absolute turkey team that is. Just get them out of the league.
I thought Tampa would show up more than they did.
Whatever. We'll get to those teams. This is an interesting game though, because at least kind of for the top seed, I feel like there's and you would know better than me, Laffy, like what the sentiment is there. It feels like there's still a lot of unknowns with the Eagles, and not just with Hurts, with how healthy he is, but just, you're playing a team for the third time. Spread is giving them a lot of love, and I think it probably should be, but I'm not sure what we get out of the Eagles today. They're an interesting team to evaluate.
The truth is, if you were to take the best players on both teams and take the 15 best players in this game, it's going to be Eagles dominated by Eagles players. But you could have said the same thing for Buffalo and Miami last week, and that was a 3-point game. Weird shit happens. But I think, Alex, when you're looking at this, Richie James is interesting to me because you're going to have Slayton and Hodgins dealing with Slay and Bradbury on the outside. You have no Avonte Maddox, unless they move Gardner Johnson into the slot, which would make it hell on earth for Daniel Jones to move the football. What do you make of the passing game today? Because nobody's expensive for the Giants outside of Barkley.
Yeah, I think that they're going to be popular for that reason, because Richie James at 3,900, he's the guy sub 4K that you can feel confident in. Slayton at 4,200 is a steal. They haven't really produced over the course of the season, but the situation now is a lot different than it was at mid-season, where there's a lot more guys in the rotation. So the one guy that's really jumping out is odd price is Hodgins at 4,900. I think he's been playing well, but that seems like a little bit too much for me. So Slayton definitely feels like the best price of the bunch. And then Richie James, I think both of them are going to be very popular because they're clear value.
What about you in the passing game, Ben? And how do you want to proceed with Danny Jones? You looking to stack him up a little bit, skinny stacks? What do you think?
more of a, to me, he's more on the side of skinny stacks and things like that, because the value from him potentially, I mean, he had 17 carries last week. He's someone that can get there without the help of his receivers, where we know the statue quarterbacks, for them to have a 30-point output, they need 300 yards, multiple touchdowns. So these guys are cheap enough where I'm fine getting to them. I do think there's been an overcorrection to Hodgins. He's a good player. He's looked good in recent weeks, but I don't think it's clear that he's now the alpha. These guys were all priced together not that long ago. And to me, that does lend itself more to Richie James. Bellinger is still, I think, on the outside looking in. There's a lot of pay down tight ends, so I don't have a ton of interest there. But I'm fine with these guys. I mean, if you're looking to really pay up with your one-offs, the Giants stack is one of the easiest ways to do just that.
Do you think Daniel Jones' rushing upside is still in play in this matchup?
I think they're going to have to give him these opportunities. Their play caller's an absolute stud. He knows what he's doing. But I also think the Eagles have seen this twice, and they had a week to prepare. Like, you would really think that they will be able to contain it a lot better than the Vikings did. So I wouldn't be stunned to see the attempts, but I would be stunned to see, a really huge ceiling output, barring one long run.
And Hassan Reddick's just a dog. Like, the only one that could get away.
Dudes.
Well, yeah. They got 4 guys with 10 plus sacks. Hassan Reddick, though, Justin Fields escaping in a couple of those rushes from Hassan Reddick was one of the craziest things I've seen. Like, no other quarterback's getting away from that. And Justin Fields just gone. But last question here, Ben, on the Giants. Saquon Barkley is right now the 4th highest projected owned player we have on the slate in our ownership projections. 26%. You see yourself with, above, below the field. Where are you going with Barkley today? Because I know you always are willing to play Danny Jones, just given his legs.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. I think some of those paths are a little more narrow, just given Daniel Jones is a red zone threat. Daniel Jones is a rushing threat. This is a tough spot. They're a significant underdog here. And Saquon, when you look against Minnesota, a nice game, he had 2 touchdowns. So like, that is going to make any line look good. So it's difficult for him to get the bonus as good as he's almost in the Eckler bucket of like, he's going to get 60 yards rushing and 60 yards receiving. You don't get to combine those for the bonuses. So that can be a little tricky. I'm going to be under. He's a great player, but McCaffrey to me is far and away a superior play.
What about you on Barkley, Alex? I know you talked about it a little bit here, but just to drill down, because he's so closely projected in ownership to Saquon Barkley, to Christian McCaffrey and many of these other top tier receivers and Travis Kelce as well.
Yeah, I think that I'm leaning towards McCaffrey as well. Just the touchdowns for San Francisco are gonna the touchdown equity is a lot higher for McCaffrey than Barkley, just given the team totals. I do feel like the talent, it's hard to pick who's like a better player. The workload, Barkley's got a little higher percentage of the workload in New York versus San Francisco, but it's really that difference in touchdown equity, and I feel like McCaffrey, it's a little bit of a tough matchup versus Dallas, so I'm not sure if people are going to be leaning towards Barkley a little bit more than they should.
Okay. All right, boys. Philadelphia. I'll stick with you, Alex. Who would you rather have off the top of the head? Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown or Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce? Let's say you're playing one lineup, right? Like the $100 spy that you won several weeks back, right? Single entry, $100 entry. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, or Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce?
Oh, man, you're putting me to the test here. Is there a gun to my head?
Yes,
but,
metaphorical gun right to the temple.
Oh, man. I guess
it's a tough one.
Kelce plus Mahomes maybe, because it's just like when Kelce has a big day, like Mahomes, like since he gets all of his production passing pretty much, like maybe there's a little more correlation than AJ Brown and Hurts, where like there's gonna be a lot of days where Hurts destroys because he gets some rushing touchdowns and AJ Brown doesn't get you the winner. So I don't know. I think both are good though.
What about Adam E? Yes, nice reference. A little couples therapy there. Good movie. What about you, Ben? Same question. It's a tough one, right?
It's incredibly tough. I do think that what Alex just said, though, is if Kelce has a huge day, Mahomes, let me say it this way. If Mahomes has a huge day, Kelce's going to have a huge day. It seems like they, Venn diagram style overlap a ton. If Jalen Hurts has a huge day, there's a better chance that AJ Brown has a big day, but it's not guaranteed. Like, it's just not the way it works with Hurts. He could have 150 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns on the ground. That gives AJ Brown 0 points. So that in that sense, I do get it that Mahomes is more correlated to his pass catchers than Hurts, but I still think that Jalen Hurts has, of all the players on the entire slate, his ceiling is truly the highest to me.
In this spot, it's massive. And I gotta be honest, I'm not really worried about the injury. He played in week 18. They ran a vanilla offense intentionally. They definitely told him not to run. Like, let's just win this game and get out of it. Doesn't matter if we win by a point. I'm a straight pessimist through and through when it comes to like who wins the game, but I don't disagree with you at all, Ben, in the sense of Jalen Hurts' ceiling here, assuming he's back to the Jalen Hurts that we saw earlier in the year. And I don't understand why he wouldn't be in a huge game, biggest game of his career. If he's doing the stuff that we saw him do before the injury, the ceiling is astronomical. And you compare him with one player. You don't have to double stack if you don't want.
No, I prefer the skinny stack, again, because he does some things that are a little more isolated points. So I have a good amount of I forced in some Eagle stacks for sure today. I just think they're such a dangerous team that I wanted to capture some of that. But, to speak to both sides of all this, we still, you said it, you're not worried about the injury. Neither am I really. But is it impossible that it's worse than we really know? I mean, easily could be.
It could be. I don't know. It's been 2 more weeks since he last played. We'll see. What about you, Alex? Passing game for Philly. How you approaching this one, especially now that Devontae Smith's been coming on huge over the last couple months, and Dallas Goedert's healthy now?
Yeah, Goddard, I feel like is top play this week. Just projection for salary is very favorable, and he hasn't had any huge performances. So I don't know if everyone's going to be on him. It's a good matchup versus the Giants, so it's really all the boxes are looking good for Goddard, AJ Brown, and Devonta Smith, especially. Like, you're investing a lot more of your salary cap into these guys. So, they're great plays, but they're in a sea of amazing plays. So it's a little bit hard to prioritize them. Okay. Unless I have Hurts.
Yeah, I get that. I like Goddard here. I think it's a nice spot for Goddard. You and I talked about it yesterday. Awesome yards after the catch guy, leads all tight ends yards after the catch per reception. Dory Jackson did a great job on Justin Jefferson last week as well. Their corners are getting healthier. I still think the clear advantage goes to Philly, but it's a pretty heavy blitz defense too under Wink Martindale. Like, I do think, Ben, this could be one of those scenarios where you see Dallas Goedert getting the ball a few yards downfield, and then you got this wild offensive line just blocking in front of it.
Yeah, listen, there's no reason that can't happen, and it's an easy way to get that additional guy to your stack, or you could even go skinny. There's a lot of ways to be creative with Philly. And then we haven't even talked Miles Sanders, who, the Giants run defense, it's not Chargers level bad, but it's bad. So maybe they keep it on the ground with Sanders, who is a frustrating player, but he's also got a ceiling we can't ignore.
You got to go further than that. You can't wishy-washy. No. It's what are you doing with Miles Sanders today?
I'll say this, and I don't think you can't do this. I don't really have him with Hurts. I kept him out of my Eagles stacks. I kept him more on maybe they limit Jalen Hurts or he doesn't run and Sanders gets a lot of work. And I used him as a one-off. The thing about the mid-range running backs, if you don't really like McKinnon or you don't want to deal with the Chiefs backs, he's sandwiched between them. And he's sandwiched between the Dallas backs as well. So he kind of sits there in a range. If you don't want to get to Dallas or KC, you're almost forced into Miles Sanders unless you're paying up for 2 spots. And that's where I landed on him. So I have a feeling I will be, let me check our tools. Where is he? Yeah, I'm probably going to get slightly over on the field with Miles Sanders today.
Okay. What about you, Alex?
I I feel like Sanders is a pretty good value. Like he's very reasonably priced, but I'm just thinking that what we've seen this year is Hurts has been getting a lot of those red zone rushing attempts, which are very valuable. So I'm pretty worried that Sanders could have a lot of yards and no touchdowns. So it's not my favorite play today. I'm probably going to try to spend up to guys that represent a little bit more offense for their team.
Okay. I will throw this out there, though. He's top 10 in red zone attempts in the league this year just because their offense has been so good. Like, I think it's kind of a rising tide lifts all ships, right? But they need to be scoring a decent amount of points for both Hurts and Miles Sanders, both to eat.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going off the idea that, like, in the rushing attempts this year, Hurts in the goal line situations has gotten more than half the carries.
Yeah.
So that's it's similar with Daniel Jones. Or actually, never mind. I don't think that's right. But yeah, I think it's just like Hurts is vulturing a lot of touchdowns from Sanders in a way that like most RB1s don't have to really contend with.
Yeah, that's totally true. Jalen Hurts is, I mean, I think like inside the 10, he's top. He's up there. He's 7th or 8th in attempts. So yeah, that's definitely significant. Actually, no, he is inside the 5 goal line attempts. Jalen Hurts is 3rd in the league behind Jamal Williams and Ezekiel Elliott. Yeah. So yeah, Sanders is 8th. All right, boys, anything else on this game? Either side, jump in. Otherwise, got to ask Ben about Boston Scott. They call him the giant killer. I'm trying to warn people that just because he's been the giant killer in regular season games, particularly ones that like Miles Sanders gets hurt, he might not be. I'm not convinced that Nick Sirianni and company are like, boys, the giant killer is putting in work tonight.
Yeah, I mean,
you like the giant killer tonight?
No, I can't say that I do. Now, you've just solidified this guy for like 7 touchdowns, but
I know.
Like, thanks a lot.
It's
no,
not
I'm
this,
not 0% Boston Scott for me.
His name is the giant killer, but yes, I got you.
Not the hippo killer. That's all you need to know.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
All right. Let's keep it rolling here. Talking since you got some fun Sunday games as well. Cincinnati, Buffalo, Dallas, San Francisco. Before we do though, I'd be crazy not to shout out our sponsor, No House Advantage. I'd also get in trouble for it. But No House Advantage, fantastic site. The overlay they've got there, you guys already know this. It's been through the roof lately. Mike, can you give me an overlay report on No House Advantage just so the people see what I'm talking about here? You got $100 first match deposit bonus when you sign up. We got the link in the description and in the chat. It was $50. They recently just changed it to $100. And there's no learning curve here because all you're doing, you're taking the same information that you glean from these shows, all of our tools over at Stokastic, particularly the ones that Alex built for No House Advantage, the optimal lineups tool, the player prop tool, projections, both of them specifically for No House Advantage, totally free when you sign up. So you've got that edge working in your favor. You're just building lineups with player props. There's no juice. As Ben mentions all the time, these are static props. So you can absolutely compare these to other books, compare them to our projections, take advantage of the fact that these get posted and then they move everywhere else and not at No House Advantage. The ones you like the most go at the top of your lineup. They get the most points. The ones you're least confident in go at the bottom. They get the fewest points. What's it at, Mike? What's first place? And it's at 20% filled with 1 hour and 19 minutes till kickoff. The overlay is better than any bonus you're going to get anywhere. I'll tell you that right now. No doubt about it. They're intentionally doing this. They want you guys to check it out. And in doing so, massive overlay. Also, you can play against the house. If you hit all your picks, you 21 extra entry. That's another cool format that they've got. Get your deposit bonus. Use our tools. Take advantage of the overlay. No House Advantage. Links in the description and in chat. All right. Alex, Cincinnati side of the football, 5.5-point dogs on the road. What do we want to do with Joe Burrow in this stack today? Or, well, tomorrow, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think Burrow, it's another example of a great player that I might be under on this week because it is a very tough matchup versus Buffalo, whose defense has been very good this year. And the weather also is going to be on the cold side in Buffalo. None of the games have like extreme weather, but the first 3 games this week all in the 30s. No wind to speak of. So, but it is a little bit of a spot where it's going to help the defense be even better than they normally are. So, I think Chase is going to be incredibly popular this week. I feel like because I think Buffalo, their defense versus wide receiver has not been great this year. But yeah, so when you look at the draft screen, it really pushes you towards Chase over Diggs. So I'm kind of leaning towards Diggs because like I feel like Cincinnati's defense isn't as good as Buffalo's, but like the way the stats look, it makes Chase look really good.
Ben, what about you? We finally get T. Higgins way cheaper than Chase for the first time in a while as well.
We do, and that does give him some appeal. Chase, obviously, double-digit targets seemingly every week. I just worry about that offensive line a lot. They're 5.5-point underdogs going into Buffalo. They're really, really hurt. I don't know how much time Burrow's going to have. He's not like he's not going to move the ball, and you've got elite weapons. But I'll keep this pretty simple. I'm underweight on Cincinnati. I have some Mixon. Obviously, I've got some of their superstar wide receivers, but I don't have a lot of Cincinnati stacks, and that's one of my stands today.
You got to talk to me a little bit about Mixon here, kind of in no man's land at that price point.
He is. He's with Etienne kind of. And although I don't like Cincinnati, he's a healthy target monster when they're trailing, and he's going to get carries. They're winning. Now, his efficiency is garbage because they can't protect, and that line is not opening up a lot. So he's going to have to get there on volume. But I still think 15 to 20 touches is going to be in basically all game scripts for him. And that gives him some appeal along with what we talked about with Etienne at the beginning of the show.
Okay. Alex, what about you when it comes to Joe Mixon this week?
I did feel like Joe Mixon's a little bit tough to get to because, they're big underdogs. Samaje Perine has been playing a lot since Joe Mixon missed a few weeks, and Perine played really well. So the split hasn't been as favorable for Mixon as we're accustomed to. So I'm kind of thinking he's a contrarian play only, and I just don't really see a ton of motivation to get there.
Ben, one of the issues for me, though, is just the fact that, the offensive line has been troublesome all season long. They started to catch their stride, right? Like, let's be fair. Cincinnati hasn't lost a game since Halloween, or since October. I think I can't remember. They definitely lost last time in October. I can't remember.
They lost last week.
What?
They should have lost last week. Shouldn't even be here.
I know you feel it. I know. So what do you think? If you're betting the spread here, you like Buffalo?
I do. And I seem to be on an island there. I know a lot of people like.
No. Not really. It opened at 3.5. It ballooned to 5.5, 6.
I missed the good numbers for sure because I have not bet this yet.
What I was going to say, the offensive line was a problem. They got injuries on the line. Unless Joe Mixon dominates in the passing game today, and you still have multiple backs in this backfield that can get involved as a pass catcher. I'm just not confident that he can get there on the ground.
No, I think he's going to have to get there with between 5 and 10 targets and obviously some TD equity.
All right. Flip it to the other side here. How about this ownership on Gabe Davis, Alex? I mean, I had talked about him all week that, 20 deep targets since week 10, leads the team by a mile. That's great. Leads the team in target share over the last month. But I did not think he was going to be the third highest owned, at least what we have projected player on the slate. That is high for a guy like Gabe Davis.
Yeah, I can see why he'd be very popular because, he's even known as a guy that really gets it done in playoffs because of last year. Do I buy into that actually being a thing? Not really. And he's coming off of good performances. Everyone was on him last week because he had gotten 10 targets in the season finale or something like that. And then last week he won the slate, and the price this week doesn't really reflect that at all. So I do feel like Gabe Davis is going to be pretty popular. He's a scary fade because he does have those days where if you fade him, you're going to lose all your money. But I do feel like I'm going to try to be under the field here.
Okay. Yeah, Ben, at that ownership, it gets a little dicey. Even though Bengals 31st ranked DVOA against wide receiver twos this season, but it's an odd spot. How are you looking at these Buffalo players, particularly in the passing game, and Josh Allen?
Certainly Josh Allen, great play. You compare it with Diggs, you compare it with Knox. Gabe Davis is the big decision point, and I'm kind of punting it. I'm gonna have a pretty good amount. Not gonna get major leverage because I don't think you can. His price is just wrong, but he's such a volatile player. The game theory aspect of it, if you are willing to get absolutely bageled or really in trouble, pivoting really can put you in a good advantage. Like, you just have to know that if Dave Davis has a game, you're going to be in huge trouble. And I think that if you take the long-term lens, it's a very interesting pivot. It's just such an easy build when you get him in there because you get exposure to the Bills without having to paying for Diggs.
What do you think your approach is going to be then?
It's going to be to be close, not let him define the slate. Because I have some leverage spots I'm going to have close to the field.
I like that. Yeah. Who do you think are the best pivots off of Gabe Davis at lesser ownership? You got anyone that jumps off the page at you?
I mean, I think that, you've got Zay Jones right there, but to me, a guy like Ayuk is kind of interesting. With San Francisco, you've got the true alphas with Debo and McCaffrey. There's a chance a guy like Ayuk could go up, or just if you have the money, certainly T. Higgins right above him, less than $1,000 difference.
Alex, are you a fan of this backfield at all with pretty much it's basically like an unprojectable split at this point between Singletary and James Cook?
Yeah, I mean, I saw enough for Cook at his price tag to give him another chance here because Singletary, Cook got a touchdown last week, so that was kind of encouraging that they gave the ball to him in the short yardage situation. The breakdown between touches was pretty split between Singletary and Cook. Nyheim Hines played a little bit in the passing game more than expected, and Cook played a little less. With Cook, I'm just hoping that they have a big day on the ground in Buffalo. But he's kind of just a punt play at his salary.
Any interest in the backfield here, Ben? It's so tough for them to get there. That's the thing.
It's if you're trying to win $1 million, of course they're attached to a great offense, but your guess would be as good as mine of what goes on with that backfield.
So just what's your verdict?
My verdict is if I have a couple teams where I landed in the range where I love the team and I was like, okay, Singletary fits here or Cook fits here, and I'm okay with that. Certainly not what I wanted, but sometimes it's the last minute, and I said they could luck box a couple touchdowns. That happens all the time.
Rank these guys: Sanders, Pacheco, Elliott, Singletary.
Sanders, Pacheco, Zeke, and Hill, and
Singletary. They're the 4 or 5K guys. They're all.
I would have them in that order.
Okay. Sanders
and Pacheco far ahead of the other two, though.
Okay, got it. Alex, anything else from this game on either side?
Isaiah McKenzie's a little bit interesting. I haven't really seen enough to believe that Khalil Shakir is going to get a significant workload now that McKenzie's back. And I feel like Cole Beasley is going to be inactive because they just don't need that many slot receivers. So all this is kind of leading me to believe that McKenzie will be a solid value, and he's only 3,300.
Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so. Alex, we have 272 likes. This is my fault. I've been slacking. Usually we have an hour and 45 minute show. It's tough to squeeze things in. We have 9 minutes to go. What do you think a reasonable projection is for what we can get to? 275, 276 now by the end of this show in the final 9 minutes.
Well,
we have 2,000 people watching.
My expert is really projecting sports and not likes.
You cannot cop out here. Do not. I don't cop out.
Well, let's go for 500. That seems pretty reasonable given we're only at 289.
Okay, I like it.
That's solid.
I like Ben. What would you have put it at? I asked you this most weeks.
We got 8 minutes left. Yeah, like 450, 500. I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Well, atone for your sins then. I know there's people out there. They feel dirty. They feel gross. There's something not right sitting within them. You want to alleviate that? Just hit the thumbs up and you'll feel great. You might even win some additional money today. And subscribe to the channel too. But hit the thumbs up. It helps us a lot. Otherwise, we wouldn't ask. It's all about that YouTube algorithm. You know, we got to bow down before them and do all that song and dance shit in order to keep things going. And you guys help us get there. All right, Dallas, San Francisco. Let's wrap it up. Then we turn it over to Greg, Ehrenberg, Neil, or Orfield. Can't say either of their names. They're taking you all the way up to kickoff, live before lock, directly after this. So do not go anywhere. And if you made the Hall of Fame or you want to check the Hall of Fame out, we got the Hall of Fame segment for all you rocking the Stokastic avatar, taking down big wins. We got that right in between these shows to hold you guys over. Bam. We're already at 407 likes. We're hitting 500. What do you want to do with Dallas? You don't, well, you're not confident?
I didn't say we weren't. I
shook your head in like,
it's not a layup. That's all. Go ahead.
It's more than a layup. It's guaranteed because I have more faith in people than you do.
That's
you would just exile everybody.
Most people, yes.
Dallas, you said
Cowboys
it earlier this
exiled,
week,
sure.
And Alex said it yesterday. Both of you guys have some interest in this Dallas team despite the difficult matchup.
I definitely do. I respect San Francisco's defense, but I also think that the Cowboys got playmakers all over the field. Now, we're going to find out, is it Tampa is so bad that does that make everybody look good? And this is a real opponent on the road and it's a little different story. But at the same time, we've talked about so many great options in quarterbacks and stacks. The Dallas stack is not going to get a ton of love. And you've still got playmakers at every price point, position. So I have some Dak and Gallup and Lamb and Schultz type stacks. You got easy run backs with San Francisco. And then the last thing I'll say, I know you mentioned it earlier in the show, Lafayette. I do want to point out over at BetMGM, Cowboys are sitting at +4. If you do like that spot, it hurts me because I don't like the Cowboys in life, but it's just business here. +4 is staring me. I'm looking at that closely. If you're on the betting side and you're in a legal betting state.
All right. So if you're somebody that's going, I love Stokastic, I want to use the tools, I don't play enough to pay for 2 months, which is $240, but I can get on MGM. I have 10 minutes of time. Or 2 minutes of my time, I have $10 because that's all you need. You go, I do have all of that, right? I'm equipped with $10, 2 minutes, and Ben Rasa's advice on what bet I should take because you don't need to win it. All you do is click the link in the description or in chat. You sign up, you put $10 on any game, any prop, whatever it is. After that settles, you got 2 months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, all of our tools, and a bonus bet up to $1,000. Or sorry, a risk. I can't say that, right? Hey, bet insurance up to your first bet, up to $1,000 on your first bet. Even if you lose, you get it all back in bonus bets. If you had one bet for anyone using this link, signing up, anyone using the link going, I want 2 free months. I want all these tools. I want to get in the Hall of Fame coming up next. What would that bet be that you'd recommend these people use today to get their 2 free? You don't have to win it, but you want to win it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, for today, I'd say go to the college basketball streets and bet UTEP tonight. But if I had to pick one of these 4 games, I will ride with the Bills. I will. I think that they're going to play a real good game tomorrow.
All right.
But the
I can appreciate
you don't have to win it. Thank God. So it's easy to say that here. No pressure over on that deal.
Okay. I'm going Dallas Goedert over 48.5 receiving yards.
Okay.
Alex, you got any bets for this weekend? Or do you want to dive into the DFS aspect of this Dallas team?
I've been betting more NBA, and our bet pro has been crushing. Like it's funny because
it really has.
I just was like, I'm going to just fire a ton of bets on Caesars and MGM and get a ton of rewards and hope to just break even. And I'm like, whenever I go to the Palace, I'll be a freaking king or something, like the guy in the commercial. But no, I think the problem is I've been winning too much, and I feel like I'm going to get limited before I can get the big.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah. But as far as DFS or NFL bets, let's see here. The one I really like is Kadarius Toney under. I just feel like that line that they said is extremely aggressive, and there's no evidence to support that.
And remember, guys, you don't need to win these bets. It's just we'd like to give you bets that we like for you to sweat with us. but you're getting 2 free months of all of our tools. BetMGM hits you up right after it settles, and your first bet up to $1,000, even if it's 10. If you lose, it's coming back to you in bonus bets. Got to be 21 years or older to gamble. And if you or anyone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, boys. Alex, Dallas, what are we doing with the Dallas Cowboys today? Ben broke it down for us. Where do we go from your side?
I kind of think Dallas is an underrated team. They've been very solid throughout the whole year. San Francisco does have a great defense. I can understand why they're underdog, but I agree with Ben. I feel like the line is a little bit I feel like they're underestimating Dallas a little bit. As far as DFS plays, Dalton Schultz, he's great price. I mean he's going to be popular as well. So and you're expecting a lot of passing attempts here. My contrarian play in this game is Zeke. He's been getting a ton of goal line attempts. He's clearly the guy they like in the short yardage situations that can give you a lot of fantasy points without a huge projection. So those are probably my favorite plays in this game.
Okay. And just a great comment. Where was that? It was Ben. It was about your picture. Benny said Ben's pick for some reason makes it look like an ad for heating and cooling. Mm-hmm. It kind of put that back on the screen, Mike, the BetMGM.
Yeah, I want to see this because I shy away from looking at my garbage pictures.
Have you not seen it? All right, hold on. There it is. It totally looks like
heating and cooling.
Yeah, like those. Like, on the side of the trucks or like the vans, they always have
a friend in Robeson. Yeah. Okay.
Picture kind of like that, like, we value your time and your investment.
I do value everyone's time.
All right. Value it some more because we got 2 minutes to go. San Francisco 49ers from Kittle. McCaffrey, I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on. You and we are already said, like, we do prefer him over Barkley. We like both, but prefer McCaffrey over Barkley. Phenomenal player. Just an elite player, both on the ground, explosive, through the air. He can do it all. What about the passing game, though? Like, are you getting to Brock Purdy stacks here? Because they don't pass that much.
No, and this burned me in the 2-game slate or whatever, because Purdy scored on the ground too, which was stupid because McCaffrey was in and they didn't challenge. That's another story for another time. I'm not really getting there. The Kittle fade worked out last week. That touchdown regression came. And you kind of know what you're getting there. I'm really focused mostly on McCaffrey and Debo because they're so dynamic and so electric. McCaffrey obviously is a luxury play, but I'm making room for him in my lineups.
All right. Favorite play on each side of this game?
McCaffrey and Gallup.
All right. Alex, what are you doing with San Francisco? We'll put a bow on this one. Turn it over to Greg and Neil for Live Before Lock.
I'm definitely leaning towards McCaffrey as far as San Francisco. Brock Purdy had a really exceptional game last week, so I feel like people are going to expect a little bit much out of the passing game there, where like they are a run-first team, especially with a rookie quarterback, and I feel like the expectation shouldn't be that high as far as how many passing attempts they get. So I guess someone like Brandon Ayuk, I don't have a ton of confidence in, but Debo Samuel as well. Like, I think they're all right plays. But McCaffrey is just the guy that, like, no matter what the game script is, he's going to be super involved. And I feel like he might be a little bit underappreciated in the ownership. So that's my lean in this game.
Favorite play from each side of this game, Alex?
On Dallas, Dalton Schultz. On San Francisco, McCaffrey.
Okay. And we are 16 likes away from 500. See, your projection was spot on, dude.
Nice.
You sell yourself short, brother. So I'm going to filibuster for a second until we get to 500 to wrap this show up. We are
as usual, sharp as attack over here. You see? No slam dunks.
What'd you say?
I said it probably, but it was no guarantee. That's all.
Oh, will you stop it, dude? We were 15 away. We just hit it right now, and you're acting like that's a victory. Well,
considering I want to get my W's where I can here, because I made a stand on UTEP basketball, and that's never a good thing. So,
Alex, you can hit him up on Twitter at Awesemo DFS. Of course, check out all the tools at Stokastic, whether it's the 5 free days. The link is down there in the description. No House Advantage. You got all the tools for that. Link in the description. And of course, BetMGM. You want 2 free months. Everything on our site for every sport, not just football. We got you covered down there Love you guys. Ben Rasa at JazzRaz DFS, me at Laffy_D. Have a great rest of the weekend. We'll catch you back here tomorrow. A little 2-game action to close out the divisional round. And shout out to Mike Lawrence for producing this one. Peace. Yo, we are back from the holidays. Happy New Year's, everyone, and a very happy New Year's to everyone that's about to get inducted into the Hall of Fame here and get their free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, $120 value. You want to get involved? You want to get up here, inducted into the Hall of Fame, have us do all the bragging for you, and get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum? Easy. All you do, go to stokastic.com/avatar. Download the profile picture. Use it wherever you play. Then tweet your wins at Stokastic HOF on Twitter. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. Boom. Free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. You're in and you're getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. Or you can come on back and we'll do it again. Let's see who we got on the board this week. Some huge winners. First up, That's Stunner. This guy just crushes all the time. Actually tweeted from our handle. Great call by Ty Schmidt using the boomer bust tool to identify Donovan Mitchell as a strong option in NBA last night. Looks like a lot of people listened. Yeah, 100K first, second, 30K, third, 10K, fifth, 3K. And then a Stokastic avatar sitting right there. Wicked Mumbles in 4th place as well. Follow that up with the 4-point play. You got That Stunner at 15K and Wicked Mumbles second with 62.50. Big night for those two fellas rocking the Stokastic and the old school Awesemo avatar as well. Logan Grew. Luca is a god, just like the guys behind the Stokastic projections. Also, shout out to the analysis. Great analysis from the best today. Thanks, guys. $20,000 win to Logan Grew, rocking the new Stokastic avatar. Looks good, man. Congratulations. And then Scott Vetter, very simple man, at Stokastic HOF, $15,000 win in the $150,000 fair catch. Followed up by Wayne Hoggs. How about Wayne? 10,000 third place. Took down my first NBA top 3. I'll snag that free membership indeed. Laffy, ship my money. Thanks for all you boys do. No, man, thanks to you. Appreciate it and congratulations. And then Lord Malachi. Been watching content since 2020 bubble season. Picked up a PGA, MMA, NASCAR win, along with MLB, NBA, and NFL. Appreciate you guys a ton for what you do. Mama, I'm in the Hall of Fame. You've now been inducted, brother. And how about this from Lord Malachi? What a sweet thought here. Special shout out to my guy, Josh Engelman. Positive energy and thoughts your way. Josh is back, baby. Josh Engelman's back in the house. Colin Crampton, not a top 3, but hopefully still Hall of Fame worthy. Huge night thanks to the rare Awesemo DFS sighting on NBA Live Before Lock A, who's with us on Friday night. And I'm glad to see that helped out old Plubert here with a $10,000 win. We got a lot today. Zach
happening, everybody? And it's time for the Stokastic NFL Live Before Lock show. Today we are sponsored by No House Advantage. Usually on Saturdays, Neil and I, well, I shouldn't even say usually anymore, but for most of the year, Neil and I were doing our tournament strategy show on Saturdays. But during the playoffs, we've converted this into a Live Before Lock show where we're breaking down the Saturday slate. We're going position by position, talking about all of our favorite options. But Neil ran into a little issues before the show started. And to me, it was very, very important that we talked about this right at the top. So as you guys come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because as we're starting, Neil's trying to upload his lineups, and he's like, fucking FanDuel, this site isn't working again. This piece of garbage site. I'm trying to upload my lineups, and the site's broken again, which, as you guys remember, last Saturday, the site crapped out. They ended up canceling all their entries. Neil, what was FanDuel's issue this week?
Yeah, well, you know what, Greg? I stand by my rant. FanDuel does suck. They are fucking everything up. FanDuel's issue this week was user error on Neil's part. I had entered the 2-game slate. I was setting up my fantasy cruncher for the 4-game slate on FanDuel, so it wasn't accepting my 4-game slate lineups. But still, I mean, I still stand by my rant.
Yeah, so we start, and the other thing, too, is I'm looking at my lineups, and I've got lineups built out for FanDuel and DraftKings, and Neil's like, FanDuel isn't working. I'm like, really? And then I'm looking like, oh my God, Chad is going to be on fire when we start the show. We're going to have to talk about this again for the 2nd consecutive week. And then we come to find out that it was just a user error. So We've got it all sorted out. But I mean, would it have been totally crazy if you were able to somehow play players from the Buffalo Bills for today's 2-game slate on FanDuel?
It was worth a try at the very least.
Maybe you would have found a hack that would have glitched the system. It hasn't taken much to bring them down as of late, but we do have a football slate to talk about for FanDuel and DraftKings, and a couple of games. We've got the Chiefs Jaguars, we've got the Eagles Giants, and not the closest of spreads. I think the majority of people here are thinking the Chiefs are going to win, the Eagles are going to win. But I do want to ask you, Neil, if one of these teams was to pull an upset, which team do you think would be more likely to be?
Just from the games today, it would be the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are a little bit more live just because I think it's just going to be 2 good offenses against 2 bad defenses. And obviously the Chiefs are the better offense, but I think that there is some chance that this Jaguars offense is able to put up points on the Chiefs and keep it close just by, scoring points. So I think that I can see a path to the Jaguars keeping it close, maybe eking one out at the end. It's a lot harder to envision that with the Giants against the Eagles, much better defense. I think Eagles are better in both facets of the game, whereas, Kansas City that might be true, but I'm not sure the defense is that much better than Jacksonville.
And I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. The Eagles are favored by 8 points. The Chiefs are favored by 9. So, Giants, Jaguars, both these teams about equal chance of winning. It's going to be interesting because as you know, I was telling you and Mike, who's producing the show last night, is I'm going over to my parents. So I'm doing back-to-back shows. I'm doing this show for the next hour, and then I have like a 30-second turnaround doing MMA Live Before Lock right after that. And then I have to drive over to my parents, or go in their house I grew up in. My parents are selling it, having a final family dinner there. And I have futures bets on the Eagles, and my dad might be the biggest Giants fan in the world. And so it's going to be this weird conflicting interest where I'm secretly kind of hoping the Eagles win just because of the futures bets that I've had for a really long time. And my dad just absolutely loses his mind over every single play that happens in every football game. So it's going to be a fun dynamic. Looking forward to that and the dinner, but also looking forward to the DFS contest. And let's start by talking about the quarterbacks, Neil, because we've got some good ones on the slate. Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. We know they've been outstanding this year. Daniel Jones has been really good as of late too. And not just from a real life standpoint, but a really fantasy friendly game as well. Trevor Lawrence, he got off to an incredibly shitty start last week, but then bounced back and was unbelievable in the second half. So what are you going to do with your quarterback exposure? Because we got 4 guys that are really 4 of the best fantasy quarterbacks we have going.
Yeah, so I'm taking my usual approach, which is spreading it out a little bit. Really like Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to be just under the field. My guess, I'm going to be right around 30% Mahomes. I really like Jalen Hurts. I actually like Trevor Lawrence quite a bit as well. We've still got him under 10% ownership. I think he's come up a point or 2 from where we had him the last time I looked at this slate. So it's a bummer that his ownership has come up a little bit, but I do think Trevor Lawrence is in a great spot against this Kansas City defense where they're probably going to be, having to score a lot of points to keep pace. So they're probably going to be doing it through the air. So I think my top quarterbacks on the slate, unfortunately, are from this first game. 2 of them from this first game are 2 of my favorites. I love it when I love players from the late games. I kind of have it to look forward to. Now it's just going to be, they could bust right away and just ruin my day, my weekend, but we'll see. Yeah. So I like Mahomes, Lawrence. I really like Jalen Hurts. Obviously you can always play. I think Josh Allen's probably right up there at the top as well. You can mix in a little bit of, Burrow, Prescott, Jones, Purdy.
Well, you've done it again. You're looking at your lineups for the 4-game slate.
Oh, you're asking for? Are we just talking about the 2 game slate today
Yes, sir.
for DraftKings as well? Okay,
Yeah,
my bad.
FanDuel and DraftKings. I think
Okay.
you are.
I misunderstood. I thought that we were going to be talking about both games. That's totally fine though. The 2 game slate, even easier for me. Yeah, I mean, I love both quarterbacks from the first game. I've Daniel Jones a little bit less interesting. So I think, probably my favorites are Mahomes and Lawrence, and I mean, probably Mahomes, Hurts, then Lawrence, then Daniel Jones is my level of interest, my order.
Yeah, I think that is totally fair. And then also, I'm going to pull up to see the latest in the in our top stacks tool and the overall top stack odds for all the NFL teams. Which, by the way, if you guys haven't signed up for Stokastic yet, we have our 5-day free trial. So that is going to cover today's slate and tomorrow's slate as well. So you get all those games covered and whatever other games Neil's going to try to enter contests for and lineups in. But also, Neil also super big on Showdown. I think a lot of people know that Neil is one of the more successful Showdown players that we have in the DFS space. And you get DFS projections, ownership for all of the different Showdown slates as well. So that's another perk to getting exposure to all the tools we over with Stokastic. And it's free for 5 days. You guys haven't signed up yet. So click on the link below if you're interested in trying that out. But talking through the top stacks tool that we have and just looking at the difference between DraftKings and FanDuel, I also want to point out that when it comes to the top stacks tool, because of the way the slates are situated, we have them broken down for the Saturday slate, Sunday slate, and have them individually. But if you look at DraftKings, we have as right now being the top overall stack, the Kansas City Chiefs projected for a 40% chance to be the top stack, Eagles at 36%, and then, fairly similar type stuff over on FanDuel, 52% for the Bills. Wait, why is I just realized the days are incorrect here. So it says Saturday and then the Sunday games are showing up. All right. Well, for anyway, if I'm looking at DraftKings, 41% for the Chiefs, 36% for the Eagles, which really bears out that the top 2 quarterbacks, at least in our projections, Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. And then as far as the contrarian quarterbacks go, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence are going to be, a little bit less so. But one thing I want to ask you is that with Daniel Jones, it's a little bit hard to stack him just from a standpoint of he runs so often. That's how he creates a lot of his fantasy points. So what are you going to be doing with Daniel Jones? Are you going to be forcing double stacks with him? Are you going to allow him to be naked? How do you approach him in large field tournaments?
So I actually did force double stacks with Daniel Jones, but I did include the running back in the potential double stack. It's true that he runs enough that you don't necessarily need to force double stacks. Alex has kind of convinced me to go more in that direction of overstacking rather than understacking, just for additional correlation, because it's so hard to just get every single thing right, and people tend to not stack a ton. So I think it's just a little bit easier if you do overstack. And I think doing the double stack, forcing in 2 wide receivers / tight ends / running back, because obviously Saquon Barkley finds stacking part with Daniel Jones as well. But I am forcing the double stack. I think it'd be totally reasonable to just force a single stack. I would not run him out there naked. How are you playing Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I would just because it's only 2 games today, I would say you want to have at least one player with him. But with that said, I think with a lot of other quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence today, even Mahomes, I know we've had a lot of difficulty trying to figure out who the pass catchers are that we want to stack him with. I brought up the case a lot that I think Jerick McKinnon is a viable pass catching option with him. I'd be more up for other quarterbacks to force double stacks. Daniel Jones, I'd be cool with one.
Yep, I think that sounds right. Daniel Jones just won. On this slate, I would also say Jalen Hurts, you could single stack, which I think that I am allowing for. I'm allowing for a single stack with Jalen Hurts. I still really like a double stack there. I actually think it's tends to be underutilized with Hurts, like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert. But I am just forcing one with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, no, I think that's a sensible way to look at it and go about it. Is there anything else you want to talk about when it comes to the quarterbacks today?
No, I think that we've covered it fairly well. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Mahomes and Hurts are the obvious, like they're going to be chalky because they are the best options on the slate. And then I like Lawrence as a contrarian option. And I was listening to the show earlier. Alex doesn't sound like he's all that high on it, which is always a ding against my enthusiasm for a play. But I still like it. I've been setting up for it all weekend, and I think that I'm still going to go ahead with my Jacksonville stacks, even though it's obviously a little bit less likely.
All right, so next we'll be talking about the running backs. But by the way, if anybody has questions for us, throw them into Discord at myself, and we could answer any of those during the show. And I'm also always going to be paying attention to the YouTube chat and see what kind of stuff you guys bring up for the 2-game slate. If there's anything that I see you guys really bringing up frequently in there, I'll bring it up on the show and it'll become a talking point for us as well. But first, before we talk about the running backs, I want to shout out No House Advantage, who are sponsoring today's show. And if you guys haven't signed up at NHA yet, they've got overlay all the time on their site. And that's something you guys should be taking advantage of. It's one of the best ways to create value for yourself, is just playing on DFS sites and entering contests that aren't full all the way, because that's just an easy way to create value. If a quarter of the field gets played and it's only a quarter of the field gets paid, but then it's only halfway full, now half of the field gets paid. So take advantage of the No House Advantage sign-up offer, which if you use our link, up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. And also, they've props you could play against the house there. So if you're in a state that doesn't have legal sports betting, pretty good chance you could play some props over at No House Advantage. And we have projections for all of them over at Stokastic.com. Now, as far as the running backs go, we've only got one pay-up option at the running back spot today, and that is Saquon Barkley. So if we look at the FanDuel pricing, he is $8,500. The next closest price running back is Miles Sanders at $7,200. For DraftKings purposes, Barkley is $7,900. The next closest running back is $6,400, Travis Etienne. So how high of a priority does that make Saquon Barkley? Because it's not the greatest matchup in the world, but he's really on an island of his own in terms of pricing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm coming in underweight to the field on FanDuel. The field is coming in at 47% on Saquon Barkley. The issue is the matchup, and Philadelphia, if you just look at the year-long numbers, their rush defense is not great. They are, where are they? They are 21st in terms of rush DVOA for the year. But if you look at them in recent weeks, they're actually top 5 in the league. The run defense for the Eagles, it's actually flipped a little bit. They've gone for the season, they're first in terms of pass DVOA, 21st in terms of rush DVOA. So they look like a run funnel. But actually recently they're like 20, I think they're 21st in pass DVOA and like 5th in run DVOA since week 13 or so for the past 5 or 6 weeks. So they've kind of flipped a little bit there. It makes it a much tougher matchup for Saquon. And just given the matchup and the price tag, I'm actually coming in underweight to the field on FanDuel. I still think that he's a fine play at 8,500, but I'm getting just under 30% Saquon on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I mean, obviously same issue with the. I'm not playing the 2-game slate. I'm only playing the 4-game slate. Okay. So I can't speak to exactly how I would play it on the 2-game slate. I think that he is, same analysis generally applies, which is that he is the most expensive player on the slate by a good amount. He's in a tough matchup, but DraftKings, he is involved in the passing game. Obviously, the PPR helps his floor and his ceiling a bit. And he's Saquon Barkley. He's always live to score a touchdown, and probably going to be a focal point of this offense. I also think there's a good chance that if the Giants are to stay in this game, it's by slowing it down, and they're probably going to want to slow it down on the ground. So I could see Saquon getting more opportunities in this game just to, slow down the game and try to keep pace with the Eagles. So I think he's a fine play, fine pay up option. I don't know exactly what I would do with him in terms of how much I'd play on the 2-game slate. On the 4-game slate, I do have him in 50% of my lineup. So that actually surprises me. That's oh no, I think that's not the crunch that I actually that was after I ran so many crunches. Now I'm trying to get back to my actual last crunch that I ran. 1 second. What do I have?
Let's by the way, because I think I think we should probably so one thing that's really confusing about today. So FanDuel's main slate is the 2-game slate. The DraftKings main slate is the 4-game slate. It's a massive pain in the ass when the sites are prioritizing different things. So that's also why you and I weren't really on the same page. And that's my fault as well. I should have talked with you beforehand. Let's do it this way, because I've got lineups built out for the FanDuel 2-game slate, and I also have lineups for DraftKings. But how about we go back and forth? I'll talk about some of the best FanDuel options when we're going position by position, and you could do it for DraftKings. I think that's the way we could cover both, because that's something I've been struggling with the last few minutes, is because I've just noticed in some of the stuff people are talking about, different people are prioritizing different things depending what site they play on. And it is kind of annoying when they're not congruous in terms of which sites are covering which game. So let's look at the DraftKings 4-game slate, the main one, and just tell me at running back overall, who are you going to be prioritizing between McCaffrey and Barkley? And then I'll talk about how I'm going to handle Barkley for the 2-game slate. Pivoting on the fly a little bit here. This is the my shitty creative process.
Yeah, so they're very similar plays for me on DraftKings. They are both coming in about neutral to what the field has him at. McCaffrey, we've got at 37% ownership, 38% chance of being optimal. Barkley, we've got at 26% ownership, 26% chance of being optimal. So both very neutral in terms of the type of play there. I was actually surprised to see just now, even after I looked at my actual most recent crunch, I actually have a good amount more of Barkley than McCaffrey. That's not actually something I was trying to do, and I don't think that I actually love that. I think that I actually, in a vacuum, prefer McCaffrey. Like, I think that it's somewhat better matchup. And okay, yeah. So I've got McCaffrey projected a little bit better. It's I mean, it both have very tough matchups. I guess McCaffrey just a little bit more involved in the offense, and it's a better offense, so you're just expected to score more points. So I have more Barkley right now. I might still change that. I do actually prefer McCaffrey just because the Niners have a better offense. They should be able to score more points than the Eagles. Sorry, than the Giants.
Yeah. So looking at the FanDuel slate, and there's a couple of things that makes Barkley at least a little bit different for FanDuel purposes on the 2-game slate. One being is that I do think the Giants, most likely because of the spread of this game, are going to be playing from behind. Totally reasonable to expect that when they're, 8-point underdogs today. So in the fourth quarter, I think they're going to be throwing the ball more often than they would be running it. For DraftKings purposes, that's great for Barkley. He's going to get a full PPR point. For FanDuel purposes, where you're paying a premium for him, he's way more expensive than all the other running backs, and you're only getting a half-point PPR bonus. He's still a strong option, but I just think he's more of a neutral play. My real priority as far as FanDuel concerned is Etienne. And the main reason why is just the price point. So if you look at some of the DraftKings pricing, which by the way covers more games, it's a 4-game slate. We've got Etienne as the 4th most expensive running back. Well, for the 2-game slate today on FanDuel, Etienne is also the 4th most expensive running back. And I would rather roster Etienne than guys who are priced ahead of him, like Miles Sanders, like Jerick McKinnon. So I view Etienne as by far the best play overall on FanDuel at the running back spot. And also, amongst the starting running backs, he's the 2nd cheapest today. That's not correct. He should be the 2nd most expensive behind Barkley. But how do you view Etienne now as far as DraftKings is concerned?
Yeah, Etienne looks great. Coming in at 31% ownership, 34% chance of being optimal. I have over the field on FanDuel quite a bit. I have a lot of Etienne. On DraftKings, I'm right at 32% Etienne. I think that's a reasonable number for him. I like Etienne quite a bit. I do think that there is some possibility that Jacksonville just gets behind, and Etienne's just not as involved in the passing game as I'd like him to be. I mean, he's a very capable pass catcher. I don't understand why they why Trevor Lawrence isn't throwing to him. He's actually running a good amount of routes. He's just not getting the targets. But that kind of makes it a little bit tougher on DraftKings, where PPR is so important. And I am taking some shots on some of these guys that maybe don't look quite as good at the tools in the tools. So I'm not getting above the field on Etienne. He's certainly a viable play against Kansas City. They are a middling defense. Etienne is a talented running back. He gets like 20 carries a game. So I do like Etienne quite a bit. I'm just about even with the field on DraftKings.
Yeah, and then overall, when I just look at some of the FanDuel exposure and the crunch around, it's Etienne is by far the guy who pops up most meaningfully for me. Then it comes out as Barkley, and then it's just kind of a hodgepodge of like Miles Sanders, Jerick McKinnon, and Pacheco all kind of grouped together. There's none of the other guys that I really think are worth taking a shot on today. I'm not going to be looking at Kenneth Gainwell today, Boston Scott, and Michael Hasty. Just kind of a dead zone for me as far as the backup running backs go. And I know to an extent McKinnon is a backup to Pacheco, but it is a little bit different of a scenario because for whatever, he is a top priority option in the red zone for Patrick Mahomes. Like, people freak out about it online all the time. Like, oh, how could McKinnon only, end up with 5 targets and score a touchdown on one of them? They kind of do it every week. It's clear that he's become a primary target in the red. Like, it's just something I expect to happen. If they get to the red zone, McKinnon's checking into the game. He's probably getting a target. So I actually do like him better on FanDuel than DraftKings. Well, for one reason, also it's a smaller slate on FanDuel we're talking about than DraftKings, but also the touchdowns matter more on FanDuel where it's only a half-point PPR. So my priorities are running back. It's Etienne 1, Barkley 2, and then just Sanders, McKinnon, Pacheco kind of mixed together. But now on DraftKings, there's other options, Neil. We've got Mixon in the mix. We've got Tony Pollard and then McKinnon, Sanders also in mid-range. How do those guys stack up compared to Travis Etienne, who we just talked about? Who's the priority of that grouping of RBs for you?
Yeah, so I actually like Miles Sanders a bit more than our tools would suggest. I usually pick a few spots on each slate. I generally lead on the tools and then pick a few spots where I think I could see this going a different way. And part of the reason that Sanders doesn't pop is he gets vultured all the time at the goal line by Hurts or one of the other running backs. So that is certainly a risk here in playing Sanders, but it's a pretty good matchup for Sanders. We don't have all that many options. I could just see the Eagles not really airing it out all that much. They shouldn't need to. They're playing against the Giants, who are, I might have just said, a pretty good matchup. They are 32nd in the league in terms of rush DVOA, worst rush defense in the league according to DVOA. And I could see the Eagles just deciding to run the ball more than usual. So I actually like Miles Sanders quite a bit. I think that he's got a nice price tag. He's projected for under 20% ownership on DraftKings. I should see if that's still true in the 20. Okay, he's up to 21%. Still, that's not scaring me away from him. He actually has slight negative leverage. So, maybe not the best play in the world just looking at the stats and looking at our sims, but I think that there are scenarios where the Eagles just decide to run the ball more than usual. And we're not totally sure if Jalen Hurts' shoulder is 100%. It seems like it probably is at this point, but still might be a little bit hesitant to go all out running Hurts. They could just hand it off to Sanders a little bit more. So I could see him getting some more opportunities. The price is pretty nice. The matchup is great. So I actually do like Miles Sanders quite a bit. Isaiah Pacheco, I know, is somebody that Alex loves, and I think that he is a great play. Also, I'm going to be playing quite a bit of Pacheco on both FanDuel and on DraftKings. More of a priority for me on FanDuel, actually. On DraftKings, though, still playing above the field, Isaiah Pacheco. He hasn't really been getting it done. He hasn't been scoring touchdowns, but he's certainly been playing generally pretty good volume. And at 5,500 against this Jacksonville defense, I do think that Isaiah Pacheco going a little bit under the radar at 14% on DraftKings in the 4-game slate. So some interest in Pacheco as well. I will be, as you said, I'll be playing some McKinnon just because they do seem to prioritize him in the red zone. I don't think it's sustainable, to be clear. He's not going to score a touchdown every game. I've said this before. But I still think that he is involved enough in the passing game on a PPR site like DraftKings. I am going to be pretty close to the field, actually.
And we got some questions in the Discord channel. We're going to hit on those. And then I'm going to ask you about if there's any punt running backs you like taking a shot. I do think this is a fairly difficult slate to roster some punt running backs. We got a question about one from Lippy in our Discord channel. He wants to know if we are a believer in the Boston Scott narrative, or is that chasing? So I believe the Boston Scott narrative. This is how out of touch I am with some of the narratives. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I'm fairly sure it's that he's had a couple of good games against the Giants in the past.
He has scored a touchdown against the Giants every game that he's faced him. I think he has like 10 touchdowns in 8 games or something like that.
So here's what I'm a believer in. I'm a believer in that the Giants don't have a great run defense. I think that's what I'm a believer. I don't think there's a thing where it's like, oh, he's a bull. He sees the color blue and he's like, let's fucking go. And he's just, running through guys. It's not anything like that. It's just the Giants don't have a great run defense. And he's been in some spots where, if I remember, there's also been previous years where all of the running backs have been out for the Eagles. Boston Scott has been forced to start. And that's different today where, Miles Sanders is viable. Here's what I think the narrative should be. Boston Scott has had so much success against the Giants because the Giants have a shitty run defense. Therefore, you should play Miles Sanders because he's the starter and the Giants still have that shitty run defense.
I'm not playing any Boston Scott today. I get it. I just said there's a chance that they run more. He's going really low owned. At least theoretically, he's going really low owned. Everybody's been talking about this narrative all week. Maybe he doesn't go quite as low owned as, based on the numbers as we would expect. But yeah, I'm not playing any Boston Scott today. The cheapest running back I'm playing on DraftKings is Isaiah Pacheco at 5,500. You could obviously, Zeke is below Isaiah Pacheco. I actually have 0 Zeke. That's interesting. It's just a tough matchup. Zeke, actually, now that I'm looking at him, like, is this smart of me playing 0 Zeke? He's coming in at 7% ownership. He does get a lot of carries. People, and I believe that this ownership, like, people hate playing Ezekiel Elliott. Throw in a matchup with the Niners, he's going to be really low owned. Maybe I'll change that. Maybe I'll late swap. I'm probably not going to adjust beforehand, but cheap guy you could consider playing. But as far as like true punts, you could consider playing Eli Mitchell. He actually didn't have huge volume last week. He was only on the field for like 22% of snaps. He just happened to be targeted on 3 of the 4 routes he ran, and he got like 9 carries somehow, only playing
for 2 yards. Remember, we were doing this show last week, and I was telling people Christian McCaffrey is going to have a bigger rushing role than Eli Mitchell, and people were adamant that Mitchell was going to have more rushing yards than McCaffrey. Here was the final tally last week. McCaffrey had 119. Mitchell had 2. That was the gap between the two. McCaffrey outrushed him by 117 yards. And something that I think I talked about last week that still holds true today, and it's also relevant to the Boston Scott situation. Once you get into the playoffs, teams are going to play their best guys more. Christian McCaffrey is going to play more in the playoffs than he did in the final couple weeks of the season for the 49ers that were not overly important games relative to the playoffs. I think that should be the expectation. So not to keep harping on the Boston Scott thing, but I do think Miles Sanders is going to play a significantly bigger role than him, despite the success he's had against the Giants in the past. Boston Scott, that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a good note that they're probably going to be less inclined to play Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell. There's also 2 backup running backs. Not even clear who their top backup is. I think I'd be more inclined probably to go to Gainwell than Boston Scott. He projects a little bit better, but it's just, you never know. One of these guys could score a touchdown. I don't think either of these guys is live to score like 18, 20 fantasy points. Like they're live to score 11 or 12. They could vulture at the goal line. That is something that happens sometimes, but it's pretty unlikely that either Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell actually puts up a game that you need. So I think they're safe fades.
And the other question we have in Discord is from G Berm. He wants to know, what do you guys think of the idea of making some stacked lineups with no run backs? So here's why I think it makes sense. And I don't know what site you're asking us about, but particularly for, it makes sense for both sites, but especially for FanDuel, where we only have 2 games and both of them have blowout potential. I think that if you look at the spreads for any playoff slate, this is one where it really makes sense to try to make some onslaught type stacks, because we've got the Eagles and the Chiefs as both nearly 10-point favorites. It is not wild to think that one of these teams could win via blowout and then they just run away with the game, and that's a stack that wins. So we don't have any games that have a spread under 3 points for the entire weekend. Even if you look at the DraftKings slate, the 49ers favored by 4 over the Cowboys, Bills favored by 5 over the Bengals. Yeah, I think it's totally reasonable for this slate to make some onslaught stacks. Is that something that you've considered at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually not foreseeing any kind of run back in any of my lineups. It's going to happen just because the slates are so short. I'm likely to run into some run backs on a lot of them anyway, but it's not something I'm forcing. I just want to add one thing on the Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell. I do think they're more viable on FanDuel. Just the more I think about it, I'm like, well, just because their price is so low relative to the running backs I actually want to play, like there is a $1,300 gap between Isaiah Pacheco and Boston Scott, and then even bigger, and Kenneth Gainwell, then another $300 down to Boston Scott. But both guys are getting, I was going to say that they look interesting. Both guys are getting around 10% ownership though. So I would still be under the field. I do think that they're a little bit more viable just because the prices, 5,100, 4,800 on Gainwell and Scott, do give you some opportunity to potentially play some lineups that you wouldn't be able to play with the other running backs. And I do think that this is a slate where all of the other running backs are like, all except for one of the other running backs could fail just because it's such a short slate. Like you can see that, and that can be the way you lead to these guys being up with just nobody else putting up more than 10 fantasy points. Maybe one guy puts up, 16, 17 fantasy points. Nobody else puts up more than 10. And then either Kenneth Scott or Kenneth Gainwell or Boston Scott puts up 8, and they're close enough and let you get to a better lineup. So a little bit more viable on FanDuel than DraftKings.
Yeah. And all right, Brandon Katz, what are we doing here? I said the Eagles are favored by 8. He says, no, they're favored by 7.5. I pull up DraftKings, they're favored by 8. So I said they're favored by 8. He goes, they're 7.5 at some other books. Go look. I even bring up that they're not 8-point favorites. Then. What are we doing?
Are you not familiar with Brandon?
And by the way, the other thing too is whether they're 8 or 7.5-point favorites. Is this impacting the lineups you build? Like, is this the difference in between whether you're making Giants or Eagles onslaught stacks? Doesn't matter. I don't need to talk about some of the semantics. We're just here to enjoy some football games that may or not be blowouts. By the way, in terms of punt running backs, is there anybody you're going to be prioritizing for really cheap at running back for the 4-game DK slate?
Nobody. So as I said, the lowest that I'm actually going is Isaiah Pacheco. I do think that if I were making 150 lineups and not on a show, I would maybe consider Ezekiel. Is pretty interesting actually at 7% ownership, just because we know he's going to have the volume and he's going to be low on. Like nobody wants to play Ezekiel Elliott. Obviously, you can play Singletary or Cook. Neither of them high priorities for me. As noted in chat, Cook's role was not as big last week as Nyheim Hines was a little bit more involved, but we don't know. That might have been a little bit of a fluke thing. I could see Cook taking on a bigger role here. as we said, Eli Mitchell is someone you could consider playing. Samaje Perine has had a bigger role recently. So to answer your question, there's nobody that I'm prioritizing. I'm not playing anybody cheaper than Isaiah Pacheco. There are a number of guys that you could consider. And I do think, Boston Scott and or Kenneth Gainwell are guys in a 150 set. I might have a handful of those guys.
Yeah, and once again, for me, FanDuel purpose, it's really hard to prioritize any of the cheap running backs, especially when you consider like Kenneth Gainwell is $5,100, Etienne is $6,800. Like, that's not all that big of a price gap, especially not relative to the projections. We have all of these cheap guys we've projected for anywhere from 1.5 to 3 fantasy points, and you just go up by $1,500 and you get into Etienne for 14 fantasy points on FanDuel or Pacheco at 11. It's such a big gap in projection relative to a fairly modest difference in salary. Is there anything else you want to talk about at the running back spot?
I don't think so. I think we covered all of the interest in running backs.
So let's hit on some super chats we've got now. This one is from Sam Pierce. Does your lineup change because of the snow in Kansas City? No. And here's number one. We're not expecting super windy conditions. And also, we're talking about some of the betting lines before. The total for this game is 52.5. That is the highest of any other game of the entire weekend by 4 points. If this was massively problematic weather, it would have been priced into the betting line, at least to some extent. I'm not saying that the line would be 36 or anything, but at least be a few points lower. The fact that it is the highest total of the entire slate, it's not something that I think you should be avoiding the game because of.
Yep, and I'm on the same page as you. It's if it were windy, then then Vegas would affect the Vegas score, the Vegas total, and then it would impact our projections and such. And then maybe we would factor in more, but not expected to be windy. It's expected to be just a little bit wet, so I don't think it's going to be a huge factor.
The next super chat is from James Magruder. Who is the cheapest, best value on the DK for single entry in the 4-gamer? So this could be any position. Who's just your favorite value play? So somebody for cheap do you think is a good points per dollar option for tournaments for the 4-game DK slate?
All right, let me sort by salary here. I know that Isaiah McKenzie is somebody that I have some interest in. Just coming back, not going to be very high owned. Alex was talking about he could see Cole Beasley not being active for this game. If Cole Beasley is not active, I'm going to have a lot of interest in Isaiah McKenzie, but I would also have interest in Khalil Shakir. I think Alex was not that interested, but it seemed to me that Khalil Shakir was actually taking on more, played more snaps, I believe, than Isaiah McKenzie in the last game that both played for the first time all year. So it kind of seemed like he was taking on a little bit bigger of a role. He had a pretty big role last week split with Cole Beasley. So maybe they're not fully buying in yet, but they seem to be trying to get him involved a little bit more. So for me, it would be Isaiah McKenzie, or if you want to go all the way punt, you could consider Khalil Shakir just for a very off the wall play that not a lot of people are going to get to.
Yeah, I mean, it also, I'm going to give a couple different ones at different positions. So one at tight end, Dallas Goedert, 4,500 is fairly cheap for him over on DraftKings. And you could play him in the utility spot as well. Like this, you don't have to only play him as a tight end. I think he's one of the best points per dollar plays just period on DraftKings for this weekend. And I know he didn't have the greatest fantasy game in the world the last time he played, but keep in mind also that was a game against the Giants where it didn't really have any significance. The Eagles also won, somewhat one-sided to finish out the season. I know the final score ended up being a little bit closer, but it never really felt like the Giants were in that game to win it. And we saw 7 targets out of Dallas Goedert. And he also is making his way back from an injury. He got injured week 10, didn't come back until week 16, played some limited snaps. Week 18 and week 17, 7 and 6 targets for Dallas Goedert. We know he's a big red zone favorite of Jalen Hurts. So I like Dallas Goedert a lot at tight end. And then if we're talking about the Giants on the other side of the game, Richie James. Cheap play at wide receiver. I don't know how the Giants have somehow put together like a kind of competent wide receiver core, because these guys, like none of them were really on NFL rosters or guaranteed roles to start the year. And now we've got guys like Richie James. Hodgins looked like a legit number 1 wide receiver the last few games. And I think that Richie James, another guy who we look at the game script, we expect the Giants to be playing from behind. Whenever the Giants have been shorthanded a wide receiver, James has gotten looks. 6 targets last week. You look at the final games where he was really involved for the Giants. Week 17, 7 targets. Week 16, 12 targets. Week 15, 5 targets. Week 14, 9 targets. It's a lot of volume for a guy who's only $3,900 on DK PPR bonus there. So I don't think he has massive big play upside, but he has the ability to be like a guy who goes like 8 catches for 60 yards or something like that. And that's pretty playable on DraftKings. So those are my 2 favorite value options, Richie James and Dallas Goedert. Any pushback on those?
No, I like both of those quite a bit. Dallas Goedert, just a great point per dollar play. Looks like one of the best options on DraftKings. Richie James, definitely something I'm going to play. And as you said, all of these Giants guys, I think I might have misinterpreted the question as low owned value plays. I don't know if that was part of it. That's what I was looking for, guys who are going to be really low owned GPP flyers. These guys, obviously all somewhere in the teens. And Isaiah Hodgins, I'm surprised to see Hodgins projected for just 12% ownership. I guess it's because he's so close to Gabe Davis. Some of these other options in that price range look really good, but he really did look great last week. And then Darius Slayton, Richie James, also in play. I would also throw Daniel Bellinger into that mix. He is generally running routes on just 70% in the last game against Minnesota, but then 83%, 91% the games before that. He seems to be pretty clearly the tight end 1 for the Giants. So I actually have some interest in Daniel Bellinger as well.
By the way, on Isaiah Hodgins, do you know how many passes he's dropped this year?
69.
69 less than that. 0 drop passes.
0 drops.
Very sure-handed. The guy comes out of nowhere. If I'm not mistaken, he was on the Bills last year. It might have been on the practice squad and got cut. Didn't even make like the practice squad this year. He goes to the Giants and kind of becomes a stud because, of course, it's easier to be a wide receiver with Daniel Jones as your quarterback instead of Josh Allen somehow. But the next super chat we just got is from Matt Corsetti. He wants to know, is the double tight end in play for the 2-gamer? I think the double tight end is in play for FanDuel on the 2-game slate. I think it's in play for DraftKings for the 4-game slate. We've got good tight end options this week, and a lot of them are just underpriced. I like going 2 tight end lineups.
Yeah, I'm generally in play. I am generally willing to play 2 tight ends on a main slate, especially on this slate where it's just 2 and 4 games, and we have so many great tight end options. Absolutely in play both sites.
So let's move on to the wide receivers now, Neil. We've pretty thoroughly talked about the running backs, even a lot of the cheap wide receivers, because we just talked about our favorite value plays. We've kind of talked about that. But if you're paying up at wide receiver, and at least on the FanDuel slate, not a lot of options. There's A.J. Brown, there's Christian Kirk. I'm finding myself in my lineups gravitating much more towards the cheaper and value type wide receivers today. But DraftKings, the 4-game slate, who are you prioritizing as far as payups go at wideout? Are there any of the high price guys that are really standing out to you relative to their ownership?
So there's nobody that I am jamming in there like that. I'm getting to like 30% of some of the high owned guys, but there's nobody that I'm getting to like 50+%. Just looking at our tools, Stephon Diggs looks great. 19% projected ownership, 25% chance of being optimal on DraftKings. I've been taking actually a big stand on AJ Brown, both sites. I've been really trying to play up these Philly stacks a little bit just because I think that they tend to go a little bit under owned, and we've seen AJ Brown and Devontae Smith have just some massive games. So I actually do like AJ Brown quite a bit. I'm coming in over the field there. Man, I'm under the field on CeeDee Lamb, which that's scary. He is playing against the Niners, but he came in higher owned than I expected him to at 17%. Looks like a neutral play. But yeah, I really like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. I am working in some of those Eagles stacks. As I said, I don't know if you consider him high end. Christian Kirk is somebody I am doing a good number of Jaguar stacks. And I think doing those stacks, I'm obviously going to include Christian Kirk in a good number of them. So I think those are some solid stacks. But yeah, at the real high end is probably Diggs, my favorite, followed by Brown and Smith.
Yeah, it's AJ Brown at the top for me. And one thing that I really like about, well, 2 things I like about him. Number one is he is cheaper than Jamar Chase and Stephon Diggs on DraftKings, and also half the ownership of both those guys, and actually well less than half the ownership of Jamar Chase right now. So to me, I think the upside is fairly comparable for those guys, but AJ Brown, the cheapest and the least owned, that's appealing to me. And then if we look at the FanDuel slate, it's hard to avoid them just from a standpoint of these are the most expensive wide receivers. Number 1, AJ Brown, 2, Christian Kirk. If you're paying up for wide receiver, I just prefer AJ Brown to Christian Kirk. And then also if you look at the ownership, Kirk is actually more popular by a good amount, 36% expected ownership to him, 29% for AJ Brown. So I gravitate towards AJ Brown on both sites, both slates for kind of different reasons. But in both scenarios, I do end up getting to AJ Brown overweight to the field. Now, if we go to the mid-range at wide receiver, looking at the, let's see, what price point should I say on DraftKings? This is the like 6K to 5K range. So Ayuk, Juju, T. Higgins, Debo Samuel, Christian Kirk. Amongst these guys on DraftKings, who are the ones that you are prioritizing?
Yeah, so the one I have the most of is Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
As I said, just kind of prioritizing that game, that stack a little bit. T. Higgins is clearly too cheap at 5,800. I think that he's just he's a very solid play at 5,800. They're going to need to score to keep up with Buffalo. So yeah, I do like T. Higgins quite a bit. Juju Smith-Schuster looks great. I'm actually above the field on Juju. I'm below the field on Ayuk, Hodgins, those guys, and Debo as well. So yeah, the highest priorities for me: Kirk, Higgins, Juju.
Yeah, so I think that's totally reasonable. When I look at the DraftKings lineups I ran, it's also the one that I also like a good amount that you didn't say there, or at least I didn't. I might have missed you say it. Debo is a pretty high priority for me. I don't know if he was amongst your group of guys, but to me, he's kind of neck and neck with Christian Kirk. Just really a bet on talent. And once again, going back to something I brought up last week, I'm kind of taking a grain of salt the tail end of the season, some of the workloads of these players, star guys like Debo Samuel. Debo played a totally different role last week than he did in the tail end of the regular season, and that just makes sense. You would save a player like Debo Samuel, who's had injuries in the past, for a scenario like the playoffs. 9 targets last game. Also had 3 carries for 32 yards, 6 catches, 133 yards and a touchdown. He was just more involved than he's typically been, which makes sense. He's one of the most talented wideouts we have in the NFL. He's super versatile. It looks like the 49ers were saving players like Christian McCaffrey and Debo Samuel for the playoffs. We could really unleash them, and they just have, an insane embarrassment of riches as far as their star skill players go on offense. So Debo Samuel is somebody I like there. For FanDuel purposes, the one that I got to the most ended up being Juju Smith-Schuster. Just hits to, I think every time I rostered Juju this year, it's gone extremely poorly. If I've ever been overweight to the field on Juju, and I guess the reason it's gone bad is because he almost never has good games. But at the same time, too, you look at the FanDuel slate, and there's only 2 games to look at. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is pretty clearly the best quarterback we have there. And Jerick McKinnon, I'm not playing him quite as much this week as I have in other spots. And then I compare the other wide receivers in this price range. We've got Isaiah Hodgins, Juju Smith-Schuster, Zay Jones, and then you're going down a little bit to get guys like Richie James and Kadarius Toney, and Juju's the guy who I like the most out of that group. And also the ownership, pretty reasonable, 27% for a 2-game slate on FanDuel. So Juju is going to be the guy there for me. Now, as far as punt wide receivers go, I know we've already talked about a lot of them because the other question we got before about who our favorite options were to save salary with, I brought up Richie James as somebody that I like for DraftKings purposes. And as far as FanDuel goes, just way different. Richie James is 5,900 on FanDuel. Hard to feel as good as I do about him on DraftKings, where he's only 3,900. But who are the overall top cheap wide receivers that you like for the 4-game DK slate?
Yeah, first I want to start by saying I'm looking at it closer now. So I have more Christian Kirk than Debo Samuel. You said that I may have skipped over it. I think that I just played it a little bit wrong, and I'm not gonna fix it now. But I am playing a lot more Christian Kirk than I have 24% Kirk, 14% Debo, and I think that that's probably wrong, given that there's only $100 difference there. Maybe not. I don't know, but Debo is clearly. It's a tougher matchup, but he's a little bit more involved. It is close, I guess. I think I'm fine with how I played it. Whatever. Going down to the cheaper guys. I do like Gabe Davis. He is coming in at 31% ownership. So, don't love the ownership there. I'm actually underweight to the field, but obviously 4,800 is a nice price tag for Gabe Davis. Zay Jones, I'm actually underweight to the field as well. I'm currently above weight to the field on Darius Slayton, which kind of surprises me. That came in kind of late. We have him at 17%. I think that he's certainly a fine play. I don't know that I want to be that much above the field, but currently I am a bit above the field on Darius Slayton. One that I don't really know what to do with is Kadarius Toney. We have him projected for 4.8% ownership. Actually, I should update, see if that's still the same in the. Okay, he has come. We've got him at 6.7 in the boom bust. So it's coming up closer to where I expected to be. I think that he's going to be at least double-digit owned, though, just because there's been so much chatter. Everybody seems to think that Kadarius Toney is going to take that next step. He's going to be on the field, 60, 70% of passing plays. Unlike so far, he's been on the field, 30% is like his peak in terms of route participation. He's just not on the field all that often. I think everybody's making the assumption now that Kadarius Toney is going to be more involved, and that he's going to have a breakout game one of these weeks. And I think that there is a good chance that happens. But I've been hearing everybody talk about, which makes me think this 6.7% ownership feels a little bit low for me on Kadarius Toney. I think it's probably going to come in higher than where we have it. I'm kind of splitting the difference, and I have about 10% Kadarius Toney. So it's, I'll be above the field if he's at 6.7%. I think I'd like to be above the field, take that gamble that maybe he does take that next step. But I think there is some chance that he gets to like 15, 20%, in which case I'd be happy to be under the field. So I think 10% feels about right for Kadarius Toney. That's where I'm at. Richie James looks pretty solid. He was on the field for like 65% of snaps of running plays, something like that. Route participation, I mean. 3,900 seems like a fair price tag for Richie James. MVS is actually the higher priority for me than Kadarius Toney. I am playing a good amount of Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I have above 20% of MVS. I'm going to let him let me down one more time. He's been doing it all year. I just want to continue that into the playoffs. Let MVS just score few fantasy points in my lineup. Marvin Jones, I also have some interest in. As I said, I like those Jaguar stacks. He's always live to score a touchdown. I think he's a fairly solid play. We talked about earlier, Isaiah McKenzie looks great. He's just 3,300 for some reason. I think that I am going to want to play some Isaiah McKenzie. And then the guys that I'm taking shots on at the really low end, I'm actually taking some shots on Sky Moore. He has yet to do it. He was a big name that everybody wanted to play early in the year. He's not on the field all that often, but he does have that home run play potential. So I'm taking some shots on Sky Moore at what we have projected for under 1% ownership. Justin Watson, probably the actual smarter, safer play. He plays a lot more than people realize. I think he played 40 or 50% of snaps last week. So I do actually have some interest in Justin Watson as well. Yeah, those are the primary cheap guys I'm interested in. Any others that interest you?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, and we'll move on to tight end here in a second, but we did get a super chat. And also shout out to Jorge Jacomi, our guy, just gifted out 20 YouTube memberships. So Jorge, one of the top supporters we have over here. We see him in Discord all the time, always hanging out in the YouTube chat. We appreciate you and all of your support. If anybody else wants to support the YouTube channel, all you have to do is like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It costs you nothing. It takes 5 seconds. It does really help us grow our channel and helps us keep our content free. Super chat we have here is from James McGruder. Best option for 3,700 or under for utility in the DK single entry. All right, $3,700 or under.
While we're looking up, I also want to say I didn't even mention Khalil Shakir right now. I'm actually taking a number of shots on Khalil Shakir. I went a little bit nuts there after I heard Alex saying he thinks Cole Beasley might not be active tomorrow. I'll adjust. If Cole Beasley is active, I'll probably just switch to more Isaiah McKenzie. But if Cole Beasley is out, I'm going to take the gamble that Khalil Shakir is actually going to take on a bigger role than Isaiah McKenzie at lower ownership. So just want to say that while we're looking that up. And he's 3,300, somebody you could consider play. But under 3,800.
It's a little, I think there's a lot of players around there that are pretty similar. My answer is Marvin Jones. That's the player I got to the most at that price point over on DraftKings. But it's also going to depend on who else is in your lineup and who your quarterback is. So, but I'm going to say, just like as a general blanket answer, Marvin Jones is the guy that I like there relative to him only being 5% owned and potentially a spot where I think the Jaguars are going to have to throw the ball a ton. But for you, 3,700 or under DraftKings, who are you looking at?
It's probably MVS for me. I just talked about how much I'm going to be playing MVS again. He's probably going to let me down again.
3,800.
Oh, I thought you said 3,800 or less. Was it under 3,800?
$3,700 or under.
Oh, 37. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be either Marvin Jones or Isaiah McKenzie. I think that, yeah, it's between those two for me. I'll go with you on Marvin Jones. Make it easy.
And we've got another super chat here. This one is from Zachary Arakelian. He wants to know last man in for a single game. So this is going to be FanDuel scoring now, and Isaiah Pacheco or Juju Smith-Schuster. Pacheco or Juju. Single
Probably
game. Once again, I'm going to assume that means he's talking about FanDuel, and I have a slight lean towards Pacheco.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
If it was, by the way, just if it's DraftKings where it's the PPR scoring Juju, if you're talking about FanDuel, then Pacheco where it is in half-point PPR. So depending on the site, that's what the answer is.
Yep, like that call.
And then we got another one in here from Mr. TD just saying, thanks, Jorge. Stokastic in the community. Get money. Thank you, Mr. TD. Let me just check the Discord to make sure that there's nothing else that came in there and move on over to the tight ends. And as far as short slates go, it's generally very difficult to fill the tight end spot. But for DraftKings, we got Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, Evan Ingram, George Kittle, Dalton Schultz, Dawson Knox over on FanDuel for just the 2-game slate. There's Ingram. Bellinger's been more involved lately. Goddard, Kelce. We've got a lot of tight ends to pick from, and we had 10-game slates where we didn't have this many tight end options during regular season, Neil. Who are you prioritizing on DK?
Yeah, so I really like Evan Ingram here. I think it's, again, I'm doing a lot of these Trevor Lawrence stacks. I think Evan Ingram is a great stacking partner with Trevor Lawrence. We talked about Dallas Goedert I think he is the best point per dollar play, at least among viable plays on the entire slate at 4,500. Dallas Goedert, a pretty high priority. Travis Kelce, obviously is the pay up option. Looks great in a great matchup. I'm coming in close to the field is right at 30%. I'll be right around there. And then George Kittle, currently, he is somebody that I'm missing out on. I'm not playing any George Kittle, which maybe I should, because the Brock Purdy George Kittle connection has been a pretty consistent one. They've actually been very good. Brock Purdy seems to be targeting George Kittle quite a bit. So George Kittle is in play. But yeah, the highest priorities for me, I would say, are Kelce, Goddard, Ingram.
Yeah, so for me, as far as FanDuel goes, it's a pretty clear tier 1 towards Travis Kelce. It just wasn't that hard to get up to him on FanDuel. So he's the guy I got to the most often. And then super split between Dallas Goedert and Evan Ingram, 6,300, 6,000. I end up with almost identical ownerships of the two of them. So at tight end, that's really where I like to go there, is with Goddard and Ingram over as far as FanDuel is concerned. I didn't really find it necessary to go to Bellinger on FanDuel at 4,900. Just Ingram, Goddard, they were cheap enough. So we've only got about 90 seconds left here, Neil. Is there anything we didn't mention on the show that you want to bring up before we close it out?
I think we've covered everything fairly well. I don't think that there is really defenses. I'm willing to play defenses against offensive players on this slate. That's something that won't do on main slates, but on a 4-game slate and especially on a 2-game slate, you can certainly play your defense against offensive players.
All right. That is going to do it for us today. But guys, don't go anywhere on the YouTube channel. The NFL games are about to start. You know where I'm going? Absolutely nowhere. I am not. Well, actually, I'm going to take a piss really quick. And then I'm going to be right back in the seat breaking down the MMA slate with Josh Harris. So on your way out, guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. But if you're going to play the MMA slate, stick around and watch the next show also.